we're ready to get into the actual fire phase. Oh boy. The sequence here so you can see. Firing, phasing player fires, then the non-phasing player. And this isn't simultaneous, folks. One side fires, causes casualties, and then the other side does likewise. So you could reduce a target unit and he won't be as effective when he shoots back. That's an important part of this game. So initiative is important, especially in shooting, not just maneuvering and charging. Very interesting how that plays out. I like it, I must say. But anyway, remember the Russians are the phasing player, the ones with initiative. And we're going to go through some shooting. So we'll get out our green dice. And we'll see what happens. Grab the modifiers here, you can see. And by the way, there's 2 play sheets with this game, and they're double-sided. So there's basically 4 play sheets. 2 double-sided, so it's 4. So there you go. And here's the side with all the shooting goodness on it. Here you got your artillery ranges. Here you got your musketry ranges. Down here we've got the skirmish firing and garrison firing. There's their modifiers. This is the number of dice they roll based on the size of the skirmish unit, so on. And down here we have our infantry and artillery modifiers, as you can see. And down here is the results for infantry and artillery. Our skirmish fire is a little bit different. They just roll a number of dice. Their modifiers are a modifier on the dice, the number of dice you roll, and you need a 4+ to hit in all cases. So if you get it, you get hit. Simple as that. Infantry and artillery are a little bit different. They're a little bit more detailed. The modifiers, for instance, give you a modifier to the number of dice rolled, as well as possibly a modifier to the result. Whatever the result is, you take down here, cross-reference with the type of shooter, and you get the result, which usually is a number of casualties on the target, as well as some possible other effects like DT is a discipline test the target has to take. Yeah, very interesting. And this over here, FD and FC, these are negative effects on the shooter. So it's possible that the shooter could get penalized by taking casualties. For instance, artillery that just shoots away uselessly against, say, skirmish targets might end up getting such a low roll, they end up getting a fatigue casualty. That's what FC stands for, and it only results in a really low roll. And what a fatigue casualty represents in this case is, well, it represents the loss of ammunition and troops getting tired, and they're not as effective as they should be. In the case of artillery, you can see what I mean if they just blast away all day. So you are penalized for just indiscriminately shooting with your artillery in this game. I like it. Very good. So let's go through this and see what happens. We're starting with the Russians. The first thing we want to do is look at the infantry. We can see the infantry, a close order volley is up to 15 centimeters. Squares shoot up to 5. Skirmish shoot up to 20 centimeters. Russians don't have any skirmishers at the moment. Skirmish rifle fire. Say your Brits out there. You know, there they are. Here's something interesting. There is a specific modifier for the 60th and 95th rifles. If they're 2 bases or more, they get a +1 CD. CD stands for combat dice or casualty dice. In this case, they get an extra dice when they shoot, basically. So that's pretty cool. Normally, you roll 2d6. For skirmishers, the number of dice you roll is based on the number of bases in the unit. But other than that, other than skirmish and garrison fire, it's 2d6. And you'll modify that number of dice and your final score with these modifiers. So let's take a look at the infantry for the Russians. 15 centimeters is their maximum range. There is no close range and short. It's just one distance. So 15 centimeters. Let's check it out. This unit, if you remember, did not move, which is good. They won't be penalized when they fire. They want to fire on these skirmishers and take them out of the action. 8 centimeters away, well within range. We're going to do that. So they're going to roll 2d6 as a standard number of dice to roll. Now remember, they've taken 3 casualties so far. 3, and that means they are still fresh. 3 or less is a fresh unit. More than that, you're no longer fresh. Okay, infantry shooting. If they're elite, they get +1 CD. That's casualty dice. Let me focus in there. Large battalion, no casualties. 4 or more, -1. 8 or more, -2. Unformed, they're not unformed. That's an interesting modifier. They not only suffer a -2 when they shoot, but they also use the inferior volley category when you're checking your results. Inferior volley. See? There's the standard. Here's inferior. Okay, where else? Moved. They would move or lost fire discipline. Use inferior volley. There is no numerical penalty for that, so it's just they use inferior volley. Recruit or small battalions use inferior volley. So there's no modifiers for them being infantry shooting. Now, infantry target is, we're shooting at skirmishers. We're going to look at this category. Infantry in column at 5 centimeters, and firers are fresh. My unit's fresh, but I'm not shooting at a column. That would be a +1 casualty die. In square or massed infantry columns, deployed battery, or skirmishers. This one applies -2 to the result. And finally, in cover, -1. So there's only a -2 to my die roll. So I'm rolling 2d6 -2. And again, if we're looking at this, you check under infantry, that's the shooter, and then the infantry target is whatever this states, like in square or deployed battery or skirmishers. So you look at this. If it was artillery firing, you'd use this box, and artillery target is whatever the target of my artillery shooting. Look through this and see which applies. So that's how this section works. So there is a total of -2 to the die roll. And again, standard roll of 2d6. Also, there's this little note. Half the casualties if fire in column or square, or 2, target is in a built-up area or strong point garrison. So neither one applies. So we're going to roll the 2d6 and apply a -2, folks, and see what happens. Not bad. You can see how the shooting sequence could go by quite quickly, and it does actually. You know, it seems like there's a lot of modifiers, but you know, there's not many of them that apply in every shooting. In most of the shooting in this game so far, I've only had maybe 1 or 2 modifiers actually apply. There you go. 5 + 2 is 7. -2, private skirmishers, is a 5. Let's look at the results. We're a standard volley line. And we scored a what? 5. Not a very good roll. 1 casualty, no other notes apply, so it's just 1 casualty is put on the skirmishers. Unfortunately, they already have 1, so that puts them at 2. So it's not enough to take away a base, which would remove this unit of skirmishers. It takes 3 hits to remove a unit of skirmishers, or a base of skirmishers, sorry. And once you're less than 2 bases in size, the unit is dispersed. In other words, removed from the table. So that's the result of that shooting. Not very effective, actually. Quite sad. But another thing to point out is skirmishers. I don't think I mentioned this, but skirmishers. This is a brigade skirmish line. In other words, all the bases came from battalion units. That's what made it up. Typically, it's like 1 base per battalion, that kind of thing. So they had like 4, I think, to start off with. They're down to 2 now. But also, this skirmish line has to remain within 30 centimeters of either the brigadier, the brigade commander, or 30 centimeters of a formed unit within the brigade, like these battalions. So it has to maintain that proximity to its brigade members. And as you can see over here, I don't know if I'm focused. Hold on a second. I might have been out of focus there. Sorry about that. These skirmishers, Saxon skirmishers, also moved. I did actually move them. They were back here. They moved into this position. And I also limbered the Saxon artillery, which were at 6 casualties, which is not very good. I think they're penalized at this point. So they're definitely fatigued. So I did do that. What else we got to shoot here? These guys don't have a target. These guys obviously don't have a target. The cannon can fire. They will do that. And also the cavalry can't shoot. That's an important thing to remember in this game. So let's do the artillery. They're going to issue fire on this advancing unit of French infantry. That's not good. So let's measure the range. Closest point to closest point. We are at about 33 centimeters. Let's look at the ranges. 33 centimeters. Let me get focused. For artillery, these are 6 to 9 pounder guns, which puts us in effective range to that infantry unit. This could be bad. All right, let's go to the modifiers. They're going to roll standard 2d6, elite battery, discipline test, no, large battery, assault fire. That's an order you can give, an ADC tasking, which I didn't do. Casualties. This unit has 5 casualties, this battery of guns. So they are penalized -1 in this case. If they're 4 or greater, they suffer -1. 6 or greater, -2. So they're at 5. So they're going to have a -1. Make a note of that. Moved or unlimbered? No. Unformed, low on ammunition? No. And finally, the artillery target is column? No. Square, massed infantry? No. Deployed battery skirmishers? No. In cover? No. They're basically a line formation. And then we'll go to the results in a second. Let me focus in. Again, this is the unit firing. They're going to roll 2d6, and they have a -1. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's a pretty good roll. With a -1, it's a 9. Let's check this out. Let's see. They are at effective range. They got a 9, which is 2 and a discipline test. That is not good. So the target will take 2 casualties, and they will take a discipline test, which is taken immediately. So let's mark that unit up here. That's its first casualties. Takes 2. Boom. So they're still considered fresh because they've only taken 2 so far in the battle. There is no bounce through because there's no units within 10 centimeters. This fire lane right there, so there's no bounce through. So that's it. Their fire is resolved, but they do immediately have to make a discipline test. And there's the chart right here. Yes, an angel got his wings. Let's roll that. It's roll 2d6, apply modifiers. Well, let's see what kind of modifiers we're looking at. They are line. They have a 0 modifier for that. Let's see, flanked, unformed, square, 1 charge, casualties, 4+, 8+, no modifier for casualties. Artillery, that's if they take casualties. The artillery, they would have special modifiers because they're artillery with casualties. Doesn't apply. So there's no modifiers for that. It's just a straight up 2d6 roll, and definitely want to get greater than a 3 or less. This is like a lot of the General Brigade games, like Panzer Grenadier. There's that 7+ you need. Once again, I remember that. So let's roll this 2d6. And we get a 5 and a 1. It's a 6. Oh, that's unfortunate, I think. We need a 7+ to obey orders and remain formed. We got 4 to 6. That is unit 4 unformed. If a skirmish unit or an evading unit retreat and lose 1d3 casualties, that would suck. All right, so I basically became unformed as well as taking 2 casualties. So that is that. Mark him with an unformed marker. That's too bad. That's going to limit his forward movement and his effectiveness in shooting. Not a big issue at the moment, but it will. So I'm going to have to reform him. So you can see how cannons, I actually love how cannons work in this game. Not only are you penalized for just shooting away indiscriminately, but the effect of guns, whether it's counter battery or whether it's against infantry in line or column, it seems to be right. It just feels right, like how effective it would be. Like this is nice. You know, here's this line of French advancing at effective range. I open up with how many guns is this? 2, 4, 6, 8. I'm counting here. An 8-gun battery of medium cannon. Boom, blast away. Cause a few casualties, and I inform the units. So they're a little bit disgruntled by that fire. I like it. All right, that's it for the French. or the Russians, sorry. Next thing we're going to do is the French, so I'm going to hustle to the other side of the table and we'll do that. There we go, all set. So here we are on the other side of the table. I want to work with this unit here. Probably do some counter battery fire, although I am tempted to hit back at these infantry. But I'm going to let them off the hook. I've been working away and pounding on these Russian guns for a while. Put them at 5 casualties so far. I'm going to keep doing that. These are still considered fresh. So we're going to do that. I believe it's long range. And it is. It's about 46. And if we look at our modifiers, let's see here. Look at our modifiers. 46 puts it at long range. See, it goes up to 85 centimeters for 6 to 9 pound guns. So we are at long range, unfortunately. So again, let's go through the modifiers. Artillery, blah, blah, blah. For the assault casualties, I only have 2, so no penalty for there. Didn't move, no low ammo, so nothing there. Artillery target is square deployed battery or skirmishers, -2. So that applies, and that's it. So -2. 2d6 with a -2. Ooh, I'm going to re-roll that. It's cocked. There, 4. 4 is 8. No penalties. And we're at long range, which is this column. And we got an 8. There it is. 1 casualty on the artillery. So this 5 changes to a 6. Now that hurts the artillery because if you look at this, when artillery fires, they're going to be penalized -2 because they're at 6 or more casualties. Not good. It also puts them closer to dispersing. Once you reach the max, you are dispersed. That's pretty much how this game works. I was kind of hesitant about all these numbers of hits units can take. Kind of worried about it. Seems like an awful lot of numbers to keep track of, but it's actually easy, and again, it feels right. So yeah, I'm actually quite happy with that. Yeah. Next, we're going to fire with, these guys can't fire at no target, but the skirmishers can fire. Let's do that. Now, like I said, their fire is a little different. You look at the number of bases in the unit, there's only 2, which is considered a small unit. It's going to roll 2 CD, which is casualty dice. So I'm rolling 2 dice, as usual. Modifiers. Skirmish tasking. There is a task the ADCs can be assigned to called skirmishers. It makes them a little bit more effective when they shoot. Again, there's the 60th and 95th, blah, 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 blah. Unformed, target is skirmishers, casualties. I have 2 casualties, and there's no penalties, so there's no modifiers. And again, all these modifiers are in CD, the casualty dice, the number of dice you roll. And you always need 4+. It's very much like Blucher when it comes to shooting with skirmishers and troops in a garrison. So they're rolling 2d6, they need 4+ to cause a casualty on that unit of Russian line. And they got a 4 and they got a 3. That is 1 casualty suffered on the Russians. They currently have 3 casualties. They now have 4 casualties. And that means they are no longer a fresh unit. They're starting to get fatigued. They're starting to wear down. So there you go. That's the skirmish firing. Next, I got this unit of line. Now, they're out of range. Your arc is 45 degrees left or right of the entire unit's facing. If you're steady, if your brigade is hesitant, you can only shoot straight ahead. That's all units. Artillery, for instance, as well as infantry. So it's kind of restrictive. Another reason to make that command roll. And of course, the Saxons are out of range as well. So are the Saxon skirmishers. So that's it, folks. That is shooting. It usually goes by very quickly, very enjoyable, very satisfying to roll those dice. And usually what you do, when you do roll your dice to shoot, and you do get bonus CDs or casualty dice, you usually want to roll smaller dice or a different colored dice along with the original 2d6. because what these bonus dice do is very much like skirmish shooting. They give you an extra casualty on a 4+. So they're handled exactly like skirmish fire. So let's say I'm shooting and I get a bonus of +1 CD. This is what it would look like. There's my standard 2d6, plus I get an extra casualty die. So if this rolls a 4 or greater, that's an extra casualty on top of whatever these two generate when you actually go to this table. So in other words, this dice does not add to these original 2d6. It's just an extra chance to get a casualty on the target. For instance, let's say I have a -1, but I have a +1 CD modifier. So it's going to be 2d6 -1. So this would be a 7. That's what I would look up. This dice, if it rolls a 4 or greater, it didn't in this case, got a 1, this would be an extra casualty, just like shooting with skirmishers. 4 or greater, extra casualties. This result would be looked up on here. This extra dice is simply to see if you get extra casualties. Easy, really. I like it. So there you go, folks. That's shooting for both sides. It took a while to resolve this one. It's because I'm making the video, I think. But next up is going to be melee, which unfortunately there is none. Remember, we didn't have any charges to resolve. So we're going to skip that, and we're going to go to the next turn. Now, I'll keep this video series up if you guys like it. I don't do many like this. They're kind of like, you know, me playing and filming everything. But if you guys like it, I'll do more of these. We'll see. But I do want to do some melees and some charges where they're actually, so there's some stuff to do. So with my next update, I'll carry through with this and show you what happened. And if you want more details like I did today, where I do a play-by-play, dice roll by dice roll, let me know. I'll do more of them and maybe even continue it with this battle until it's resolved. It's up to you guys. I hope you enjoyed. I hope I wasn't too confusing. And if I made any mistakes anywhere, let me know. I'm still learning myself before I actually do a full review and a full bat rep. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed. Stay tuned. I'm going to get into charges and melee next. Take care. Hey, folks, just want to make a little collection as you're watching this video. It's not really a how-to video, so there's going to be mistakes. It's basically this whole video is showing you how I'm going about the process of learning and demonstrating the game as I'm seeing it with my first ever playthrough. So there's bound to be some mistakes, and one of those mistakes, and I've made a few, and I've tried to make as many corrections as I can in the video itself, but one of those mistakes is skirmish firing. I refer to causing a hit on a D6 score of a 4+ with a skirmisher shooting. That's wrong. It's actually a score of 5 to 6. You score a hit, a casualty. And also, if you roll a double 6, you also cause a discipline test on the target. And that's found on page 70 of the rule book. If you're following along, it's right there at the top. So all this time, I've been doing it on a 4+. They cause a hit. It's actually a 5+. So my skirmishes are a little bit deadly in this game. So keep that in mind, friends, as I go through the battle. I do a couple shooting phases, and I mention needing a 4+ for my skirmishers when they fire. It's actually a 5 to 6, and you cause a discipline test with a double 6. So I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, folks, let's keep on going. See what's next. Okay, folks, here we go once again. This time we're moving into a new turn. Mainly so I can get into the charge sequence in the melee and show you guys how that works. That's probably going to be up there with the cavalry. So we'll get started with a new turn. We're going to start off with the command and initiative phase in a moment here. One thing I do want to point out, some things were brought to my attention, including something I noticed that on the play sheet here, if you look down here, I was talking about this earlier under demoralized brigade. It says scores of 4 to 6 equals brigade obeys orders. In other words, it's steady. Well, that's a typo. It should be 5 to 6. And underneath that, of course, it says score of 1 to 4. Brigade is hesitant. So that's a typo. That 4 shouldn't be there. It should be a 5 to 6. Another thing that I made a mistake on was in the shooting phase. I believe it was for the French battery of guns. I believe that's what it was. They had a -2 penalty up here because they were targeting a battery, a deployed battery of Russian guns. So they had a -2 on their die roll. I did not apply that. They rolled an 8, and I believe they were at long range, resulting in 1 casualty. Okay, that's fine, but I didn't apply the -2, which results in this result of 6, which is a 1/2. In case you're curious about that, this is kind of like you'd see in General to Brigade. It's basically a half casualty. And what that means is you roll a d6, and on a 4+, 1 casualty is caused. 1 to 3, no casualty is caused. So that's what that means whenever you see this. So basically, it had no real effect on the shooting yesterday. I'll just assume that they made their 4 to 6 roll for this result here and got 1 casualty on the Russian guns. I think we'll take that. So yeah, just to clarify a couple things I noticed. I still haven't had time to look up a few other things that I've been curious about during play, but I might do that sometime today and post some observations at the end of the video. But hopefully we'll get to the melee and show you how that works. There's going to be some action, folks, right up there on top of the hill. Want to get those guys in action and see what happens. So stay tuned, folks. I'm going to run through the command and initiative phase next. Here we go. We're going to get into the next turn. We're starting with command and initiative. Once again, you can see that. Right there. We're going to start off with rolling for ADC availability and taskings. Basically, it's a D6 for every brigade, or every ADC you have, really. It equates to how many brigades you have. Still on the table. So for the Russians, it's going to be 2. And for the French, it's going to be 3, because they have 3 brigades. So those are the ADCs available on a 3+. Those ADCs are currently available at this moment in time for further tasking. So let's roll these and see what happens. Again, 3+. Good roll for the Russians, poor roll for the French. So both ADCs for the Russians are available for fresh orders. French, unfortunately, only have 1 of their 3 ADCs currently available. So I'm going to pause a little bit and think about this and see what I want to do. Actually, that didn't take long at all. Since we really want to get these guys in melee, we're going to focus our attention for both sides on the cavalry brigades. So for the Russians, they have 2 ADCs available. What they're going to do is 1 ADC is going to be a brigade attachment, ensuring, or hopefully ensuring, this brigade can remain steady and carry out its orders for the turn. It gets that reroll, remember. So that's a brigade attachment. Its second ADC is on the glory task. And I'll mark this brigade with the glory marker. Let's check out glory. Let's see what that is all about. You can see right there, glory. It costs 1 ADC, or requires 1 ADC. The attached brigadier leads the charge. Add +1 CD to melee. Recover 1 casualty on a 4+ if infantry. These aren't infantry, so that's ignored. But basically what it is if the brigadier attaches himself to a unit, one of his units of his brigades, when it charges and gets into combat, that unit will gain a 1 casualty die bonus in melee. So it gives him a little extra chutzpah in the fight. So we're going to attach him to one of those units. That's what we want to do. Now for the French, quite simple as well. They have 1 ADC, and I'm going to use that as a brigade attachment as well for that cavalry brigade, kind of ensuring that they stay in action carrying out their orders. So like I said, I want to get them into the charge as quickly as possible. Okay, so tasking is now complete. We're going to move on to the next part of the command phase, which is the brigade command rolls. Each brigade will roll d6 and see if they are currently active. Basically hesitant or steady. So let's roll for the French. 1 brigade at a time. We'll start on the left with the Saxons. They need a 3+. 1, and they don't have a brigade attachment task on them, so they can't re-roll this. They are hesitant. So unfortunately, we're going to mark that Saxon unit as hesitant. And that's unfortunate, Keep in mind that every hesitant brigade deducts from your initiative die roll with a -1. Next, Central French Brigade in the middle there. They get a 1, and they don't have a brigade attachment either. They are also hesitant. This is not good. The tide is turning. And finally, the cavalry up there on the hill. Now, they do have a reroll. So let's roll for them. Need a 3+. 4. And they didn't need their reroll. They got it anyway. All right, so they're okay. So 2 hesitant brigades for the French. That'll be a -2 on their initiative roll. Now for the Russians. Let's start off with their infantry brigade, which is first. They need a 3+. 3. They got it. They are not hesitant. Now let's roll for their cavalry up on the hill. Once again, they have a brigade attachment. So they get a reroll. 3. They are good. So we'll just take these brigade markers off. No longer apply. The glory stays, and we are ready for initiative. Both sides roll a 2d6. The French suffer a -2. Again, -1 for each hesitant brigade, which is quite unfortunate. So, do the Russians take the initiative? Did they have the initiative in last turn? I don't remember. Well, whatever. Hopefully there won't be a tie because I don't remember. Russians score a total of 6. The French scored a total of 9. -2 is 7. So they win initiative by 1 point in this case, 7-6. So the French just barely held or attained initiative. So we're all set, folks. The phasing player is the French. They will be going first. They will be declaring charges first. This ought to be interesting. Stay tuned, folks. All right, now we're going to get into the actual charge phase itself. Again, the French have initiative. They're the ones going to declare their charges first, which is really important because if you're charged, you can't declare a charge. So it kind of prevents the enemy from doing any of his charges. But the first thing you do simultaneously, both players, is this is where they would attach commanders to units. I know before in an earlier video I said that commanders can move during the command phase and the movement phase. That's not correct. They can actually move during the charge phase and the movement phase. And this is where they would do that move. They would basically move as an option to attach themselves to a unit involved in a melee. In this case, he has the glory task, so he's going to attach anyway. And his bonus is that in combat, in melee, that will get a +1 in addition to whatever other modifiers there are for him being attached. Ideally, even though he doesn't have initiative, he wants to attach himself to this unit of Russian hussars. So he would move up to 30 centimeters. Commanders can always move 30 centimeters to attach himself to that unit. When you do attach yourself to a unit, in whatever phase it is, if the unit you attach to has yet to move, it can still move. It's full normal distance, and the commander will continue to move with him. So he basically moves to attach and can move again along with the unit. So there's no separate movement rate, or it doesn't prevent the unit he joins from continuing its move. It just keeps on moving. Commanders are quite versatile, maneuverable. So that's done. Both sides would do this simultaneously. The French are fine. The Russian wanted to join, so that's taken care of. The next thing you do is, in initiative order, starting with the phasing player, the French, declare your charges. In this case, the French are going to declare 2 separate charges. He wants this unit of hussars. They're fresh. They want to charge into this unit. They also declares this unit as a supporting unit to the charge. It qualifies as a support. It's within distance of 10 centimeters and so on, facing in the same direction. So as an option for the attacker, he can declare this unit as a support. So there's the charger, and there's the support. The defender, speaking of supports, if he has anyone that can qualify as a support, like this unit, for instance, in this case, they have to count as a support. So that's mandatory for the defender. The attackers, it's never mandatory to include a unit as a support. He has the option to do so. And in this case, he's choosing him to be the support. This unit is in position to be a support for him, but he opts not to. So this unit is not supporting this charge. And the reason for that is because the French player also wants to charge with this unit. In other words, make contact against this Cossack unit. And again, no fiddly wheels or anything. It's straight ahead movement in this case because it's right in front of each other. And he declares this Dragoon unit to be supporting this charge. This unit could, if you want, charge, say, against this target, or even against this target. They can both charge against them, but he's supporting instead. Basically, supports allow rerolls in the charge resolution sequence, and they basically help you out. They'll also maintain their relative position at the start of the charge with the charging unit. So they're going to wheel and move up as well if the charging unit wheels and moves up. They're going to maintain that position. So that's the first thing, and that's charge declarations. Now, the Russians will now follow up with their charge declarations, and they basically don't have any or don't want to do so. He wants this unit to support. This unit's being charged, so any charge it wanted to do is canceled. And this unit here, same thing. They initially wanted to charge, but the enemy's coming. Counter charges, by the way, which would happen here, possibly, are built into the charge sequence results. And again, we'll get to that in a bit. Both sides roll dice and see what the outcome of the charges is. That's where counter charges will kick in, that kind of thing. But in the meantime, charge declarations are made, and the Russians basically don't have any. So that's the end of that. Next in the sequence is to actually move, starting with the phasing player, his chargers forward up to 5 centimeters away from their targets. Now, during a charge, you can initially wheel up to a limited distance, and then move straight ahead into contact with the charged target. You have to aim for the center point of the target or the closest point to you. In our cases, they're all straight ahead, so there's no wheeling to worry about. You have to end your movement within 5 centimeters. Well, I take that back. Not within 5 centimeters, but 5 centimeters away. So you don't move to contact yet. Instead, you move so you're 5 centimeters away. You start with this one here. You would stop at this point. And his supports would next move, maintaining their initial position. They're about that far away from them. So these guys would also move up to that position. And the next charge unit would do likewise. And right there's our 5 centimeter maximum distance we can approach. And then it would stop here. So this whole charge sequence is quite involving, I must say, probably more involving than any other part of the game. It's got a lot of color and a lot of interesting tidbits to it. It is a little bit fiddly, but especially when you're learning the game, but it makes so much sense. At this point, the chargers are done. The Russians don't have any. They're finished. At this point, we resolve reactions from the chargers. This is where basically the defender can shoot or form square with infantry, that kind of thing. There's also support fire for the defender if he has cannon or whatever close by with no other targets within range, where the closest target would be the charging enemy. He can shoot at him. Quite useful, but in this case there is none of that. There won't be any shooting or any other reacting in this situation. The results of all that might cause discipline tests, retreats, and all kinds of nastiness. Maybe the charge won't get through, or the charge falters, all kinds of things. But that's not the case. There's no reaction going on here because none of these guys can shoot. So basically we next go right into the actual resolution of the charge. Find out what happens as these guys move into charge distance. And both sides will roll 2d6. They're going to apply some modifiers. Sorry for moving the camera around. Let me show you what that looks like. you get an idea what I'm talking about. Both sides roll 2d6 and apply modifiers. Here's their troop grades, recruits. The Cossacks are all counted as recruits. We're going to count everybody else as line. In this case, the French and Russian hussars. And then they'll go through these columns of modifiers that will apply. The supports allow rerolls, starting with the attacker. He can make his rerolls from his supports. Every one support allows one reroll. Basically, you reroll one of your 2d6. Like for instance, if it's too low, you might get a higher result with a reroll from a support. In other words, the type of reroll can be based on the support type. Like for example, each elite, veteran, or line support unit allows you to a 1d6 reroll. Each recruit, in the case of our Cossacks, massed column, square, infantry line versus cavalry, or unformed support allows you a 1d6 reroll with a -1 modifier. In other words, I can reroll one of my dice, but that dice reroll gets a -1 on it. So if I roll a 4, it's now a 3. So it's impossible to get a 6 with a reroll with this guy. That's how it works. And finally, artillery, skirmishers, and garrisons do not support, so you don't get support from any of those units. So that's the modifiers. We're going to roll 2d6, apply some mods, and use our supports. That's next. So let's do that. We're going to start with this combat, and each combat will roll their own separate dice. So we're going to start with this combat here, or this charge first. The French will roll 2d6, and the Russians will roll 2d6. And we get a total. And by the way, if there's a double 6, it results in a destiny roll, which is a separate little procedure, table that you roll on. Very fun to use. But anyway, no double 6s here. We got a score of 6 for the Russians and 9 for the French. Next is going to look at the modifiers to see what we got. That would be next. Let's see. Line. Well, first of all, we got to decide if we're going to re-roll. The French do have a support. They're good with that. They could get a d6 roll and re-roll that 3 and possibly get a higher roll. I'm not going to do that. We're going to keep this. And instead, we're going to do some modifiers. Well, you know what? Let's see what we get with modifiers, and then I'll decide if I want to re-roll. How about that? Makes a little bit more sense. The French are line. They are 0, so nothing going on there. No officer attached. Charge on is a task. Heavy cav, blah, blah. Campaign cavalry versus heavy or battle cavalry. Not the situation here. Unformed. He's not informed. Infantry versus column, line, square, infantry, cavalry on a narrow frontage. They're all the same frontage. Casualties, there are none. Hesitant, faltering, or demoralized brigade. No, not in this case. Defender flank, charge and flank, blah, blah, blah. All right, so there is no modifiers for the French. And like I said, I don't want to re-roll it. I'll keep that. So we got a final score of 9. So that's that. Now let's look at the Russians. I don't think they have any modifiers either. Oh, yes, they do. They are recruits. No, I take that back. They're hussars, not Cossacks. The Cossacks will get a -1. They do have a brigadier attached, so they count as the next grade. So let's see, line. We're going to count the Russian hussars as line. They count as veteran. They're going to get a +1. So they're going to actually be at 7 now. Differential of 2 in favor of the French. Maybe the French will take that re-roll. They can still decide. Charging on? No. Heavy cavalry lances. Campaign cav versus heavy cav? No. None of these apply here, as you can see. Casualties, blah, blah, blah. All right, and of course the Russians have no re-roll. So the final score would be, I added the +1 here. It was a 6. It's now a 7. Going against 9. Difference of 2. I guess if we look at this, the 2 result, this is where you would look. On the cavalry versus cavalry would be this. Could take the reroll. It's going to be a melee regardless. I think we'll just keep it. We won't reroll. So what we do is we take the differential, which is 2 in favor of the French, so it's positive. They're the attacker. And we look under this row, along this row, cavalry versus cavalry. Attacker, melee. What that means is they move into contact with the charged target. The defender, which is the Russians, countercharge and move into contact. So basically what happens is both these units will move forward until they contact each other. So basically they look like this. Basically they're going to meet in the middle. Alright, so that's the result of that charge. There will be a melee, folks. The supports will not move. They'll remain where they are because they're rear supports. If they're a flank support and they can make contact, they would also move into contact. So that's not the case in this charge. Now, the second charge involving these 4 units. Same thing. We're going to roll 2d6 for each side. And we get a double 6. So we're going to look up the destiny table, my friends, right there. The Russians rolled it. Anyway, the French do get 1 reroll because of their support, and it'll be a d6 reroll. And the Russians, the Cossacks, also get a reroll, but because these Cossacks supporting are recruits, the reroll will be a d6 with a -1. So not always a good idea. So first of all, let's look at this destiny roll. This is always fun. This is why I like these General de Brigade style games. They have things like this. Here's your destiny table. It's basically whoever rolled the double 6 in this case, which is the Russians, they're simply going to roll on this chart, and it's going to tell you if something wacky happens. So let's do that and see what happens. This will be a separate roll. It's done immediately. We're going to roll 2 other dice, keep them separate. And they got a 3 and a 4. So a total of 7, which results in this result here. Discipline. It says, recover 1 casualty or reform/change formation or wheel or melee with Elan. Applies to his unit. We don't want to wheel, we don't have to change formation or anything like that, but I'll tell you what, that melee with Elan will come in handy. Basically gives them a bonus. So you know what, we're going to give them a melee with Elan token, or an Elan token rather, which is right here. So that was a good result. They got a little extra motivation somewhere. I'm going to take it to these charging French hussars. So there you go. That is the destiny table. So all kinds of fun things can happen from that. Use your imagination here. But still, we have to resolve this particular charge and see what happens. Which, pull out my charge table once again. Russians definitely don't want to reroll, because if they did, they would be removing their 6 permanently, because they can only get a maximum of 5 with a reroll, because they have a d6 -1 reroll. Not good. So they're going to keep that nice juicy 12. And the French aren't going to reroll either, because this is a nice 11. I don't think they could pull off a 6. Let's see what the modifiers might be before I make my final decision. I don't think I'll do it anyway. We're going to, let's see, the Hussars are line. The Cossacks are -1. So let's apply that right away to both of these guys. This will become a 5. Next, general attached. No, there's no generals attached here. Charging on, which is a ADC thing. Heavy cav, lancers, blah, 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 blah. Unformed. Blah, 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 blah. I think the charging with Elan gives you a +1 in combat. I don't remember. I'll have to look that up. I believe it does. That would be under the melee results. So I don't see that anywhere else on here. So there it is. There's no casualties, blah, blah. And the supports we already figured out. So there we go. The end result is an 11 going against an 11. So it is a 0 result. So right here, I wouldn't want to chance the French making a reroll. It's too risky. So here we are, 0. Cavalry versus cavalry. So it's the same as previously. The French hussars will move into contact. the defending Cossacks will also countercharge moving into contact. So it's the same thing. So let's do that. They're both going to meet in the middle. So this ought to be an interesting little melee. Now, these guys could also move if they can move into contact with the enemy, which they can't. At least not without making a wheel. I don't think they can do that. But I'm not sure about that. But regardless, they're not moving. So yeah, these guys aren't moving either. All right, so that's it. We have now resolved the charge sequence. There's no more charges to resolve. And if I could just show this again, there's quite a bit of different kind of results you can get here. Some bad, some good. The charging with Elan is good because I believe it gives you a bonus in the actual melee resolution, which we will see when we actually resolve it in the melee phase. But this gives you an idea of the different kind of results. You know, the attacker can end up retreating with 1d3 casualties. It's pretty nasty. The defender taking the ground that the charger was holding previously. So they would move forward basically and occupy the charger's position. So that would not be good. That's an example of a countercharge right there. So you can see how the countercharges for cavalry are built into the results here. So there you go, folks. That is the charge sequence. It has been resolved. Quite fun, quite interesting details added to the game here. Okay, folks, the next thing to do is we're going to go into the movement phase. And it's worth noting here that anybody that took part in the charge sequence by moving, charging, supporting, that kind of thing, is not able to move and fire later in the turn. So whatever they did there, they're done. They can't move a second time or shoot a second time, that kind of thing. So we're going to go right into the movement phase next, starting, of course, with the French because they have initiative. And then it comes the fire phase, and then finally the melee phase where we get to have some real fun and show you how the melee is actually resolved. So there you go, folks. That is the charge phase. Stay tuned. Observations here about the charge sequence. One thing that's interesting, it just occurred to me. Well, I did actually point it out. Normally supports, the attacking supports, can move into contact if they can actually move into contact with the charged unit. I don't believe there's any wheels with that. I believe it's a straight ahead move. So if we look at this support here, he can't actually make contact with this unit. If this unit was wider, he probably could, and then he could just move straight ahead. But my question that popped in my head is, how far can he move as a support? Because he can actually move into contact with this supporting defending unit. And it also says that an attacking support unit can move into contact with a defending support unit, which he is. But that's a big haul, and I don't think that's what you're allowed to do. I think it's probably a short distance of maybe 5 centimeters, because that's what the charger was ending his move at. Maybe that distance. I don't know. That's a little tricky. I'll have to look deeper into the rules with that. I don't see it right now at this point. Yeah, very interesting. Now it says rear supports, attacking rear supports, they don't move. And one thing to keep in mind is there is reinforcing an ongoing melee, which can occur in this game. If this melee is a draw or something and they keep fighting, well, you can reinforce it in the next round. And that's where rear supports would come in handy, and they could basically move in to fight as well. So yeah, that was an interesting little observation there. So at this point, I'm just going to leave him where he is because I don't think he can actually move into contact with anyone. Yeah. And the same applies for the defenders' supports. They don't actually move. A second thing to point out that's interesting that I don't see mentioned in the rules is if a unit is counted as a support in the beginning of the charge sequence or the charge, does it still count as a support later on in the same sequence? And the reason why I bring that up, or that question popped up, is because because this unit countercharged, I moved him forward. Now the rules don't tell you to do that. It just says they move into contact, into melee contact if they're able to do so. So basically, I move these guys both forward half the distance, and there they are. Because it just makes sense. Because these guys are moving into contact. They're also moving into contact with a countercharge, so it makes sense that they meet in the middle. But it does kind of move him away from support distance from him. In this case, it has to be 5 centimeters. Well, he's now beyond 5 centimeters from the unit he's supporting. So I assume that he's still counted as a support unit later on. And the only reason that comes up as a question is because when he has the option charge as well, or move into contact, I mean, does he still count as a target because he's a support at the beginning of the charge? Could he move into contact with him? But that's me overthinking, I think, because I really don't think he could do that anyway, because it's just too much of a move. So I don't know. That's worth looking into. Very interesting how this game looks at it. And, you know, it's one of the strong points of General de Brigade and General d'Armée is the detail of the charges, because that is one of the highlights of Napoleonic battle. You know, the big epic charge, particularly with cavalry. So it does get a little bit fiddly. There's a lot going on, but I'm enjoying it. So for some people, it might be a turnoff. Too much detail, too much, slowing it down. But then again, once you've played a couple games, this all becomes second nature. And this is my first run with Gd'A Game and really doing multiple charges like this. So you're seeing it live, folks. You're seeing me struggle with some things. Which is great. It's kind of like we're all learning at once here. You got your rule books at home there and you're trying to follow along. It's interesting. So yeah, those are some observations about the charge phase. So I don't see anything else coming to mind. But yeah, and by the way, this Elan, oh, Angel got his wings. This Elan will gain this Cossack unit a bonus. +1, I believe, in the melee combat. So that's what that did. So some inspiration from the Cossacks. This will be an interesting fight, actually. I got this guy with an extra die. This guy with a +1. Should be good stuff. All right, folks, stay tuned. We're going to go into the movement as planned, starting with the French.